You are running with the Devils, and it is a victory show. Yes, the Devils end the season with a 46-33 win over the Oregon State Beavers in Corvallis last weekend. I'm the Rhino, Ryan Knowles. Here with me, as always, Big John Caldwell, and a great prelude to the holidays. Big John, the Devils go into Corvallis and take care of business against the Beavers. A measure of revenge, I'd say, for some of their misfortunes in the Northwest in 2014 and a couple other years. Not an easy place to play up in Corvallis.
Now, Herm has said every year we got to go up against this team, and they're just getting better and better. They're tougher out, and there was
last year.
Well, last year, the 1 point loss and the going for two, that left a lot of sour taste in people's mouths. So it is now. Redemption is the strongest motivator in sports.
Absolutely,
sports fan, you guys. There's nothing like it, and I think there was a little, there's some chips on some people's shoulders. There
were a lot of players on that team who are on this team now who definitely wanted to go up there and take it to them, and they definitely did. I think there was a lot to like about this win. I mean, especially on the offensive side, we weren't sure how this offense would play. With the rainy weather, it was a little bit chilly up there as usual this time of year. But 514 yards of total offense by the Devils in this one. I mean, just a totally dominant win, especially on the ground, which seems to be the kind of the calling card for Herm Edwards and Zach Hill and the Sun Devils on offense of late. Just enforcing their will. It seemed like even with the weather the way it was, but Rashad White, he had a tremendous game again. This guy, he's certainly looking to be kind of the bell cow, the primary back that they tend to look for, and he had himself another strong game. 13 carries, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was also a bit of a factor in the passing game too. He caught a couple of balls as well. And then Chip Trainum, of course, a nice compliment to. They mentioned this on the broadcast. To White's Lightning, you got Trainum as the Thunder. And he was running over some guys. He had himself a nice game. Found the end zone once again. 12 carries, 57 yards, and a touchdown for him. And Jaden Daniels. Even though he didn't throw the ball a lot, he didn't have to. I mean, not the best throwing, not the best passing game for him, but the running game was working so well. Again, he didn't really need to air it out too much. 8 of 15, 139 yards. Had a beautiful touchdown pass to Jordan Porter. But he got it going on the ground too. 83 rushing yards. He ran for a couple scores. Always good to see from him. So I mean, a lot to like offensively from this team in this game.
Yeah, I thought this was the game where White really pulled ahead in terms of his being the number one back. Prior to this, we really didn't. We kind of had a sense that maybe he was, but he really proved himself to be the number one back. And Trainum.
They were 1 and 1A, I think.
Yeah, but now we know that Trainum is the hard, tough, physical back, and White is really the guy who you set up the block properly, he waits, and boom, he's just smooth, just has that little nice extra burst of speed. But it's nice to have these two great backs, and Nada. We haven't mentioned him. Nagata was he had 5 carries.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't that. He was involved more in the second half once the game had kind of gotten out of reach. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely contributed. He had 10 carries for 48 yards.
10 carries,
which is still a nice game for him.
Well, the fact that we just kept, you and I were screaming in our text to one another over at the USC game, like, just keep running the ball, and
why wouldn't you? It was working so well.
It was, and
I think it took Zach Hill a couple of games to kind of realize that that's his. Given how little practice time they had, they didn't really have any tune-up games. Everybody kind of laments the early non-conference games, especially when they're played against lesser opponents, but they're important for teams to get on the same page with each other. Because you can practice all you want, but until you actually get into a game situation, you don't really know how things are going to go.
No, but Zacchia was brought here for a reason, and Herm expressed it. He said, if we're going to be at a Power 5, top 5 team, you got to score in the 40 points. And guess what, folks? We got there. We're at 40.2 is our average. Now, it was very skewed because these last 2 games, but still, I think it's very clear that we are going to be a running ball club for the next couple of years here. And that's in stark contrast to really where we were last year at where I think we were scoring 24, 25 points a game.
Yeah, and if you could bring up the offensive stats from this game, it was great to see. Even with several players out for this game, that was certainly I think a surprise for all of us. We weren't really expecting. There were some guys that came down with contact tracing.
Mm-hmm.
I think they certainly missed Darian Butler on the defensive side. Curtis Hodges had himself a nice game against U of A. He was certainly missed. And, Johnny Wilson has shown himself to be a potential number 1 receiver. Certainly wanted to see another game out of him. And then Andre Johnson's another guy who just, had leapt off the page with some of his play of late. So it was tough to see, some of these guys go out. But, hey, it's a next man up mentality on this team. And luckily they're deeper at a lot of positions than they have been in the past. And, it was great to see, players, especially on the defensive side, players like Connor Soley, Caleb McCullough, Will Schaefer, from Saguaro played some big snaps.
Yep.
And it was a little bit frustrating to see the Beavers kind of run as well as they did. I mean, they still gave up 250 yards rushing, but they were able to force a couple turnovers, turn those into points. And that block punt, I think, was certainly big as well.
You mentioned a couple of players that are just near and dear to my heart, Soley and
a couple of Cats, of course.
Schaefer. I got to watch him for 4 years.
Yeah.
Just very high intelligent. I mean, nobody thought Schaefer would be even on the field this year, and you can't keep him up.
I talked to a good friend of mine about this. When we were watching the Open Championship, he was wondering why the running back from Chandler, who was having a huge game, was only being recruited by non-Power 5 schools.
Mm-hmm.
I told him he didn't really have the speed. He's like, well, why is Schaefer getting all this love? And I'm like, he's not going to play running back at the next level. He's going to be a linebacker. And he's showing out right now at the on the defense, and then also on special teams as well. Earned himself, Pac-12 Special Teams Player of the Week for that block punt. So definitely great to see him flash in a game like this.
And I'm very impressed by Caleb McCullough too.
He's had two very nice, made some nice plays in 2 straight games. We'll talk about it a little bit later in the show when we preview next season. Obviously we're not going to get into this right now. Still want to, finish up Oregon State, but there's going to be some players there's going to be some openings on both sides of the ball, and I fully expect a player like Caleb McCullough to play some big snaps for the team in 2021. So, and then just sticking with our now moving on to our players of the game here, presented by XLLending.com for all your mortgage needs. Check out XLLending.com. We talked about Rachaad White on the offensive side. Another great game from him. I mean, this guy just continues to show out every time he touches the ball. He's a home run threat. He's so fun to watch. To me, I mean, he's another Marion Grice to me. I keep making that comparison. I know. But
even the network guys, the network guys keep sort of picking up on that name too.
Just the way he finds the end zone, with his running style, his ability to catch the ball in the backfield. So much to like about Rachaad White's game. And then also one of mine, DeAndre Pierce. He's a guy, the son of defensive coordinator Antonio Pierce, of course, had himself another nice game, 9 tackles and a tackle for loss. Just great to see him. He's another player who always seems to show out every time he steps on the field.
Yeah, mine were Evan Fields, 9 solos, 1 assist, 1 forced fumble. He was just all over the place.
As usual. I mean, that's just kind of how he plays. we weren't really sure how the secondary was going to look when the team moved from a 3-3-5 to a 4-3.
Right.
Of course, one traditional defensive back, and Ed Fields was kind of the hybrid safety linebacker, and then you switch him over to a true strong safety. Not really sure how he's going to be able to handle that, but he's played extremely well this year, and definitely one of my favorite players on the team.
Yeah, boy, if he can come back next year, he get, folks, everybody gets an extra year. If this kid comes back at his rate of improvement, he could be.
Oh, he can be a monster. Absolutely,
he can be a monster. Yeah, and then Ricky Pearsall, I think he's one of the most athletic guys we have on our team.
Yeah, I got to eat some crow on him a little bit because he's a guy who I said after the USC game and when he blew that onside kick.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know I hate to bring it up, but he's a guy who I wasn't sure about. I was kind of like he's kind of like the Andy Isabella for the Cardinals. I just didn't have a lot of faith in him.
Yeah.
I thought his freshman year he was kind of marred by some key drops. But I think he's really found a niche in this offense now, and he's a guy who's going to be a contributor going forward, absolutely. And he had he had a nice touchdown against U of A, and followed it up with another nice game here against Oregon State. So good for him.
It appears that Jaden and Ricky really have they're starting to really get in sync with each other now.
Well, they've been looking for him on third down a lot.
They have, yeah. And quite frankly, our third down efficiency could really use is one of the real sore points, I think. But
they could use a go-to receiver. That's very true.
Yeah, and if we Darby leaving, he appears to be that sort of that guy could probably run the intermediate routes better than Darby did.
Whereas they're different types of receivers. Whereas Darby was kind of the deep guy who go up and get the 50-50 ball. Whereas Ricky's kind of the underneath guy, better route runner. Has some speed, and but is a little bit more of like the thinking man's receiver.
Yeah, he's fun to watch in practice. He'll go up high point balls with all kinds of people around him. He gets horizontal for balls, one hands balls. He's just a human highlight film out there.
My friend Kevin McCabe, he covers high school football, and he's really in tune with the players. He kind of knows what to look for when it comes to how guys who get recruited and guys who can succeed at the next level. He was very high on Ricky Pearsall, not just because he's a Corona del Sol dad himself,
sure.
but because he got to watch Ricky Pearsall a lot, but he really liked what he saw from him. So those are our players of the game, presented by XLLending.com. For all your mortgage needs, check out XLLending.com. Now, putting a stamp on this season, it was very much a season of highs and lows. It really was. I mean, there was a lot of hype coming into this season. It was kind of a bummer when we found out we weren't going to get a full season and it going to get pushed back a couple times, and then there was an abbreviated schedule. Just a lot of things. You really weren't sure how the season was going to play out. But a lot of good things came from this season. I think, the emergence of the new players like DeMonte Traynham and Rachaad White, and the running game in general. This has always been kind of a passing team. They really showed out in the running game and showed that they could be a power running team, right. That could could still put points on the board. I think that was so great to see. And then the defense's ability to force turnovers, I think, was huge. When they were forcing turnovers, they were, very, very tough to move the ball against.
Yeah.
And they created opportunities in turn for the offense. And then the pass rush, this is a team that's there's also a program that struggled to generate a pass rush at times. But they, with a new defensive line coach and Coach Rodriguez, really weren't sure what to expect from him, especially with the changeover from the 3-3-5 to the 4-3. But they were able to generate a lot of pressure. And, there were some guys, especially Tyler Johnson, Michael Matus, Jermaine Lole, they were all able to make an impact in the backfield. And, of course, anytime you beat your rival, it's considered a good season. And the legendary, just record-setting blowout of the rival down south I think is definitely going to be a highlight of this season.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a couple of other goods here, Ryan. For me, obviously, we had the number one offense in the pack, um, and we kind of figured it out. That hey, we really were a running team. But here's a stat that should stand out for you. We were number 2 in the pack in sacks against average. What that means, folks, is we weren't giving up. We've improved a lot in terms of our how many sacks we were giving up. We're only at 1.5 per game, and last year was considerably different. And I attribute it largely to the left side of the line, Donovan West and Kellen Deitch, who we'll talk about their honors in a second. But those two guys really, I think, set the standard for how it was going to get done out there on the old line. So big improvement there. Big improvement, obviously, in our running game. We have, and then, talking about the ball hawk defense, we were number 1 in the pack in turnover margin, +8 this year, folks. We created 13 takeaways and gave up the ball just 5 times. We fumbled 4 times and were picked off just once. Now, both those numbers could have easily been higher with all the fumbles at Oregon State, but we're talking about a really wet game, kind of an outlier, I think. And we really should have had one clear-cut interception against U of A with Soley, who had that ball in his hands to go for 6. But Daniels finishes the season with a 1.19 interception percentage in 16 games, folks, and 422 passing attempts. He's still only thrown 3 interceptions. Okay, that is, I think, to me, is the why he remains in the premier category in our conference.
He knows how to take care of the ball. I think
yes.
That's got to be, page 1 for how to be a great quarterback. I think,
and then another really telling statistic, if you really drill down on this, is yards per play. We were number 1 in the pack again this year. Again, the last 2 games highly skews it, but to be fair, there's no statistic that is more indicative of the offensive team's effectiveness than yards per play, and we led the pack at 7.3 per play. That means yes, there's a lot of big 50-yard plays, at least 1 per game, but this when you start drilling down in the teams that are in the college football playoff this year, that's a stat that all of them are very high in, and we're in that class now. So there's some there's some really when you talk about the highs, you start drilling down specifically into each one of them, there's some really nice numbers behind all this. And there's some great stuff to build on. So we've made improvement in that area. Now, we're going to go to the bad, right?
Oh, this is always never easy to talk about, but, just talking about it, them being unable to hold the leads late in the games against USC and UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Those are games that, we had the lead late. USC especially, just an awful meltdown there at the end, a choke job for the ages, I think you could say. I think that it'll come a time. This is still a really young team. I think like 70% underclassmen. So I think that games like that you can take as learning experiences. You can understand what you did wrong, what you can do better the next time, so that it doesn't happen again. I think that's the really only way you can take it, and that's that's the only way young teams learn a lot of times, is by committing, by going through games like that.
And they have to learn how to finish. And and there's an off. How many freshmen did we have on the participation report this year? 21, something like that.
I know we had that many against U of A.
U of A, right?
I'm sure that's about right. It might be a few more for guys who got in the game against UCLA with the players that were out. But anytime you have a team with over 20 freshmen playing in a game, that's huge, and that's certainly something. It wasn't just during mop-up time either. There were a lot of freshmen, redshirt freshmen on the 2 deep, and on the depth chart. So these guys being in these tough games, being in these close games, I think, or is only going to make them a better team going forward. So, and then the passing game was a little tough to watch at times. I think it got better as the season went on, but early I think they were trying to force it a little bit too much, especially early in games. They were just doing some things, I think, that maybe where they were trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with some of the concepts and whatnot they were trying to do. Of course, Zach Hill didn't really get a full training camp. We talked about didn't really get any tune-up games against any lesser opponents to work on some things. So it was tough for Jaden to get on the same page with those young receivers and adapt to this new offense with a lot of pre-snap motion, multiple tight ends, things like that. So, but again, I think that things improved as the game went on, as the season wore on. And then, of course, first game, you're facing one of the toughest secondaries in the country, if let alone the conference, in USC, and they were really unable to get anything going. And I think that is something that they're going to have to work on in this off season. But I think they'll only get better.
Yeah, I think we have made statistically some improvements in the rush defense under new D-line coach Robert Rodriguez. We still finished really ninth in the pack, and these are really tough numbers to sort of assimilate because of the short sample size, small sample size. But our rush defense, we're giving up 183 yards a game. You still had some real bright spots. Tyler Johnson really stepped up this year, really improved his game. 16 tackles for, including 7.5 for loss and 5 sacks. That's huge for Tyler. Good for him. I really hope we get him back. We'll talk about that in a minute. Sophomore defensive end Micah Matus, big improvement this year, and really was as a first-year starter, 3.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 2 passes defended, and a forced fumble.
And he also had that safety that he forced against UCLA, which was really great as well.
And then probably the most stalwart guy from game to game, I thought, was Junior Jermaine Lole. He was just such a stable force in there in that 3 technique he has now at tackle and no longer playing D end. He finished with the top pack interior lineman defender grade from Pro Football Focus. He's getting noticed, folks. He had a great year, and I really hope he has he decides to stick around. However, losing early on to a groin injury, Amiri Johnson really was a big disappointment to me. I really thought he'd be in the mix. I was counting on him.
We all did, and he's such a freak with how long his arms are, how big he got. It was it was very tough to lose him, but he's still such a young player. We definitely haven't heard the last of him, I don't think.
Sure. We're going to have to get better in third down situations for folks, and in red zone defense. Where there's still some, our third down defense, we're 8th in the pack. Even though looking forward, these are the kind of things that you're going to have to get better at in terms of getting off the field and not. A big case in point, our third down efficiency against USC really was one of the had we just been what were your 7 of 19 for third down. That's just unacceptable.
We make a couple of those, especially near the end of the game.
Right, and
a whole other story.
It's a whole other story, absolutely. But sacks of quarterbacks, pressures, we were tied for 7th in the pack. DJ Davis and Pasifia and then Shannon Foreman were all really great in terms of at nose and at tackle for putting in that pressure up the middle. I expect that. I think that's where I think first-year D-line coach Rodriguez really made the biggest changes to our improvements to our defense. But there's a lot going forward to sort of that looks good to build on. But just know, folks, that you can't keep your defense on the field all game. You got to get off the field on third down. So,
especially as much as college football's changed with teams wanting to go for it on fourth down even more. You got to be able to stop teams on fourth down as well.
We So lots of, while we call some of these things bad, I look at it more like, okay, we actually were a little bit better in a lot of these categories than last year. But, remember, folks, we're going through a whole different kind of defensive scheme. And we've only had one class that we have recruited to that scheme. This new class coming in, long and lean, very athletic, different kinds of ball players than we have now, especially
Specimens.
specimen type
That's what we have
that are suited for this kind of. We literally can recruit now defensive ends. Before we were recruiting all tackles across the front and kind of teach guys how to be defensive ends. Completely different going forward. So those are sort of my observations to the bad. Let's talk about ugly for a sec.
Oh, and it was this is kind of the story of the season, so to speak. When you talking about ASU football, of course, after the right around the time of the USC game, I guess you could say, COVID tests just went through the roof, and many of the players, including one entire side of the ball, which was reported, and several members of the coaching staff, including head coach Herm Edwards, were tested positive, and the team was forced to cancel 3 of the games as a result,
right,
essentially cutting the season in half. So
yeah.
that was such a big blow to the season after I thought really showing something in USC, even though they lost that game. They still left you with the thinking that, hey, I want to see more of this team. I want to see more of what they're capable of, and then to lose 3 games the way they did,
right.
It was just so hard to lose, especially when an abbreviated season already.
I know that desire for people to want to see more of these people is probably what led to a lot of the fan frustration as to when Herm announced we were going to play in a bowl. But I kept trying to tell people who were really upset with Ray or Herm, or for whatever motivation you think that if it was ulterior motive, folks, these people were beat. These guys were tired. They had been going up and down roller coaster every day since March.
Well, they've been isolated. They hadn't seen their family except on a computer screen either.
They've been eating
on the phone.
They've been eating out of plastic for 8 months.
Yeah,
this is crazy. I'm just going to call it 2020. Everything's just leave it at that. It's in our rearview mirror.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody, I think the last 2 games were sort of cathartic for everybody, because they know that they're a lot better.
You couldn't tell by the score.
Right. Well, by the way, you take that last touchdown away from that Oregon State scored, and a lot of those defensive statistics are really got improved. But that's again a factor of how short of a sample size.
Yeah, exactly. When you only play 4 games on the season, everything's just every play is just gonna be magnified.
Well, our red zone defense would improve. Our scoring defense would have taken us into the top 1 or 2 in the past.
So those are interesting numbers, but at the end of the day, I think you still got to pass the eye test. And in for the most part, I'd say for at least 70% of this season, this team passed the eye test. They look like a team, like a major team that can compete, on a perennial basis. And if they continue to recruit the way they have, and a coaching staff can, especially the top 3 guys, that offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, and head coach, kind of stay where they are and establish some continuity in this program, which is something that it's struggled to find. There's no reason this team can't compete for a championship at some point.
We're going to get into that in a second about that.
Yeah,
we're going to get into
we'll talk about 2021, but just putting the final stamp on 2020, closing the book here. Jack Jones and Ashari Crosswell, of course, violation of team rules. They were forced to miss the last 2 games of the season. Not leaving the school on the best of terms after really flashing. We really thought the secondary would before the season started. We thought the secondary was going to be a strength of this team, and they were at times. I mean, they came up with some big plays. It was certainly great to see guys like Chase Lucas and DeAndre Pierce and Tamarcus Davis play as well as they did, but Ashari Crosswell was kind of buried on the depth chart. It seemed like at times he didn't play a ton of snaps. USC, And Jack Jones, I mean, was thought to be a shutdown corner, but he obviously couldn't keep it together off the field, and you know we we had high hopes for him coming into this season. He just didn't live up to expectations.
Yeah, I think 2020 COVID puts a big magnifying glass on it. It amplified all kinds of things.
And it amplifies and magnifies the player's frustration, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's no doubt that loss to SC, was scarring in some ways to some people, and I can think that Jones and Croswell took it, because they were from that area, really felt like it was, that they didn't put forth the best effort, and they really should have. They'd like to have that game back, but
And speaking of which, another player who we thought was going to be a big factor this season, one of the most popular players on the team, and somebody that the program has built a lot of their marketing around, was Frank Darby. He's a guy who's known for making spectacular touchdowns. Just someone who was going to be the go-to receiver in a very young receiving core and expected to lead this group. He had a bad injury against USC. Really wasn't much of a, he played against UCLA, but wasn't really a go-to player.
Yeah.
And still struggled with that rib injury that he had, and ultimately decided to opt out of the season for the last.
He has six catches and a touchdown, but that's nowhere close to. I'm sure it was very frustrating for him. But I think we all wish Frank nothing but the best going forward.
Oh yeah, he's been a great Sun Devil, and
yes.
Certainly one of my favorite players, a guy that I've watched for 4 years now. Just continue to grow and be one of those guys you could certainly see making an impact at the next level, in the vein of N'Keal Harry and Brandon Ayuk. Just maybe didn't leave on the best of terms necessarily, but we still wish him nothing but the best going forward.
Yeah, I think the total body of work still is very strong.
Yeah, he'll get a long look, I think, from somebody. Whether or not he gets drafted, I think is a little bit up in the air. If he does get, somebody will take a flyer on him maybe in the later rounds. But I think he could have definitely helped himself a lot more this year than he did.
It's all going to be about fit. Who needs a guy who can run the long streak routes and things. He's I don't think still the intermediate balls where he's got to get separation.
Still struggled to catch those intermediate balls, but again, that's something else he can work on. So that'll do it for 2020 as far as ASU football is concerned. But of course, we do have to talk about the awards that came down this week from the Pac-12 conference. These certainly much deserved players, of course, getting honored on the all Pac-12 teams. First and foremost, of course, Donovan West, just a tremendous player. Whether it's pass blocking, run blocking, he always grades out very high. Did not allow a sack all season, and was the team just a big part of why that running game was as successful as it was this year. Was big number 61, and he's only a sophomore.
Yeah,
we're going to see him for at least another year, and oh man, I can't wait to see what he continues to do.
Yeah, and my guy Michael Turk.
Of course,
This is his second time on the first team.
And of course, he wasn't expected to come back. COVID obviously affected his ability to get looks in camps and whatnot. Was not drafted, even though he declared, but was still able to come back. So good for him. You never want to punt the ball, but when you do, you want to control field position, and he certainly allowed the team to do that.
Well, he was averaging over 51 points, around 51 points per punt, which was phenomenal. I think he finished close to 42, but still
just a monster leg. I mean, I think certainly I would argue the best punter to come through here.
And it's not just distance. He still has the ability to put touch on the ball, spin it backwards, and put it on a goal line and have it spin backwards for you.
Yeah.
The kids, give him a lot of credit for figuring it out and hanging in there and keeping himself in shape for what was obviously for making an award like this.
Yeah.
Our second
So,
team.
second team, of course, Tyler Johnson. He was a guy who just, who flirted with retirement after a bad neck injury last year. Wasn't sure.
All kinds of injuries.
I
All
think
kinds of
he fit much better into this 4-3 system, I think, than the 3-4.
Oh,
That
clearly.
was a big part of why he came back, and he just thrived in this defense.
Yeah. Well, this is the kind of offense where guys his size and his range really do well. And still, I think he still has a lot of room for improvement. His best move is still he's got a little bit of a swim, and he's got a little bit of and still his best move is the bull rush. But we're so much better with him in there, and
such a nice combination of size and quickness. He's very aggressive when he gets after the quarterback, and a very sure tackler. Always seems to be around the ball.
Yeah,
a lot to like about his game, and great to see him get honored. And then of course Tyler's a local kid from Gilbert Highland, and another local kid, Chase Lucas from Chandler High. It seems like he's been in the program for a while now.
Yeah,
and a guy that Herm Edwards, when he first came in, of course, being the former DB, kind of took under his wing. Worked with him a lot in practice one-on-one, and really took to the kid and tried to make him the best player he could be. And I think he certainly showed it this year with some of his play.
His ball hawking skills, really, he was the most consistent DB we had. He in past years, I thought he got burned. We would kind of get picked on in certain games. I don't think he was nobody picked on Chase this year. He was way too consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was great to see him kind of, even though it was a short, small sample size, still, I think, made a quantum leap from his junior to his senior year. Mm-hmm. And I think he definitely put himself on the map with a lot of teams looking to draft a corner.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Again, for Chase, it's all going to be about fit and how that grade from the NFL turns out, or how they.
Yeah, and you got to keep an eye on him at the combine. I think he's, he can do a lot for himself there. And another player that I think nobody really saw coming, and we talked about him as a DB, after signing day, and that's the Florida kid, DJ Taylor, as the returner. Oh man! Of course, he had that monster 100-yard kickoff return to open the Territorial Cup game, and really set the tone for the rest of the game with that big time return. And he's a guy, they kind of made the move, switching him over to offense. Not really sure what he's going to play just yet. I mean, he looks like he could be a running back, but they could move him out to receiver. A lot of things that you can do with him. He's such a great combination of size and speed.
Well,
he's very versatile, I think.
Keep him on special teams. He'll score a touchdown, and the next play he'll go out and make the tackle.
That's a given, but you can also, I think you can also play him on offense. I mean, special teams is a given, but I think you still want to get a little more from him on right. The offensive side of the ball, and that's what they seem committed to doing that, because he got some offensive touches
right.
the last couple games. So, expect to see big things from him, certainly on special teams, but also on the offensive side of the ball in the years to come. Big time honor for him as a true freshman, making all Pac-12 teams.
He really did just jump off the film in terms of what he accomplished this year. But, I have people all the time ask me, so they say during the recruiting class, what does athlete mean? I said, that's what that means. DJ Taylor's athlete. Okay, that's the definition of why you recruit certain kids as the athlete.
Versatility.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really great to see. Good for him. And then of course honorable mentions. Guys who weren't really one of the top 2 or 4 players at their position, but still deserve mention for their contributions on the field. And Kellen Deach is a big one, of course, coming here from the grad transfer from Texas A&M. Is expected to slot in at left tackle, but really we weren't sure what to expect from him because he wasn't able to crack the starting lineup with the Aggies.
Right.
You never really know what you're getting sometimes with these transfers, but I think we were surprised. Committed some turnovers at times, but was still about as consistent as you could ask for out of the left tackle.
What's interesting is he graded out as the second best left tackle in the pack. Again,
Yeah,
small
didn't give up,
samples.
I mean, if you watch him on tape, didn't give up a ton of pressures, was very consistent, and they ran I mean, right next, playing next to Donovan West, they ran a ton of running plays behind him, and he was very solid in run blocking as well. So, definitely a lot to like out of him in his 1 year. Of course, we talked about Evan Fields, just a monster at that strong safety spot. Comes up in run D. Will lay the wood with guys coming over the middle in pass routes. Just an all-around player, and it's certainly one of my favorites. And love the way he plays.
Evan is last year in this setup. He really didn't understand the 3-5 real well under Gonzalez, but my goodness, he
and he played
well,
the
he did.
Tillman position, which you're asking the guy to do a lot, to play linebacker on some plays, play safety in others. That's a lot of responsibility.
And what he did last year was he did what they told him to do and made a ton of tackles. This year it was an easier defense in terms of how the zones worked.
A little more read and react this year.
And he still was just all over the field. It was amazing to keep seeing his numbers showing up on every side of the left or right side of the field.
He was always top 1 or 2 in tackles every game.
Yeah.
Definitely great season from him. Another one of my favorites, Jermaine Lole. I mean, this guy's, ever since he set foot on campus, he's been an impact player on that defensive line. Weren't sure how he was going to play, making that transition from defensive end to defensive tackle in the 4-3, but continued to make an impact every single game. Great pass rush from the inside. A very strong in run defense as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just a great all-around player, and I really hope he comes back next year, because I still think he's got big things ahead of him.
Folks, you hear Big Ryan and I talk a lot about gap responsibility. Lole was probably the most consistent gap manager we had across the line, I think, in terms of being gap solid. He was so yeah. I'm really looking forward to him coming back next year. I just pray.
Hopefully he does. And then we talked about Kyle Soley. Another SaberCat.
Mm-hmm.
Just
captain.
Lot to like about this kid. I mean, captain. Certainly one of the most intelligent football players you'll ever meet. Just goes out and makes plays every single game.
Game.
And this was his first year as a full-time starter. And he's another guy I think benefited from the change over to a 4-3, because he's asked to, just play one of those linebacker spots. And he's a guy who, you can drop into coverage, you can blitz him, you can do a lot of different things with him. And he's always going to be where he's supposed to be. He's always going to,
he runs really good.
He's going to make his read. Just be where he's supposed to be. Stay home, and make the tackle. And
he runs really great lines.
Very, very consistent player.
Yeah, Ryan. I think he's the kind of player that just runs beautiful lines to the to the ball carrier, but he's always solid in his responsibility. I don't think he got burned really at any point this year. But yeah, you're right. Dropping in space, could be in the backfield in one play, could be dropping in space the next. He's just a really, really, you watch how he runs. He's really fluid at the hips and with his feet. You look at hips and feet for a player like this, and he's very, very athletic in that sense. So, hats off to Kyle.
He's been one of your guys since he set foot up.
Well, he's got such high football IQ, and he's literally, I watch him in practice, and he's telling everybody what to do. And I gotta say, I've had times when AP will walk over and start talking to me during practice, and Kyle's running practice for the linebackers, because he knows exactly what the drills are supposed to be, what you're all supposed to do.
What coach doesn't love a player like that?
Yeah, it's like having a bench coach.
Yeah, so and then rounding them out here for the All Pac-12 honorable mentions. I think the biggest surprise on this team, again, same thing with grad transfers. You never quite know what you're going to get with junior college transfers, and Rashad White, coming in, he was kind of an afterthought, especially as much praise as Chip Trainum and Daniel Nagata had, being as highly rated as they were. was kind of an afterthought. Oh, we need another running back. Oh, let's go get this guy. You know, no big deal. But he is a very big deal, and he certainly established that from the get-go, and just completely showed out and had a tremendous junior season. And he's another guy that I can't say enough good things about, because all he does is go out there and make plays. He's such a tremendous player.
Oh, he's a full-grown man out there, guys. This is not a project. This is not somebody under development. He really seemed to just fit right in, and he's our number one back going into the next year. And listening to his interviews, he's such an unselfish person. He's got a lot of he's got that great team sense about him, and wanting to make sure everybody else, does well too. So, while we have 3 good running backs in this program, he's not concerned about his numbers or his product. He knows they're going to come. He will do what it takes to have this team win. And I just love players. Players like that.
You intentionally go out of bounds to try and give your buddy, the 5th string running back, a shot at a touchdown. The coaches know who you are. They know that you're a great, good player, a good teammate, and they're going to continue to want to give you the ball and give you opportunities. And Rachaad White, I mean, he's a great story. I mean, he started out as at a Division II school, redshirted. You never really know where, when you go to a school like that and you redshirt, you never really know where you're going to go from there. But, and then he transfers to a junior college in, Mount San Antonio, a great program. But, again, you don't really know what's going to happen. But he worked hard to improve himself and put himself at that Power 5 level, where he could get noticed. And he certainly did. And I think we're all glad he's a Sun Devil now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, of course, what was that?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So finally sticking with the running backs, Chip Trayanum was also honored. An honorable mention offensive freshman of the year. The award did go to Utah running back Ty Jordan, but Chip Trayanum was certainly honored for his season. Nice we mentioned what a nice compliment he was to Rachaad White. But true freshman running back, you don't always know what you're getting, even if they played a great, big time college program. But he finished with a tremendous year. 49 carries, 290 yards, 4 touchdowns, a 6-yard average. I mean, that's pretty great for a true freshman running back.
Wouldn't it have been great, Ryan, to see White and Trayanum, how they would have lined up against Utah this year? I think they would have. I think they would have. They would have been in shock.
Lined up against everybody. I mean, I would have loved to see a full season with these players, and it's so tough that they weren't able. It's so disappointing we weren't able to see them for a full season. But I think the future is very, very bright at the running back position with players like this.
So let me ask you a quick. So inside the red zone, who's your go-to back? White, Trayanum, or Nagata?
Where we are, because if we are, I'd say red zone's considered anything inside the 25.
Sure.
I'd say from the 25 to the 10, I'm going with Rachaad White, because he's got that breakaway ability. He's got the ability to make guys miss. He's the one who's going to break out into the open and take it to the house. If you're inside the 10, you're going to need a guy who's going to get the tough yards, who's going to run over somebody. Certainly you can make a guy miss, but somebody who's going to bowl over somebody on his way to the end zone, and that is Chip Trayanum. I think that a lot of people make that thunder and lightning comparison, but that, to me, these guys are textbook definition. Even though Rachaad, he's a bigger guy in his own right. He's not small by any chance. He's not it's not like it's Willie Parker and Jerome Bettis out there. These guys are a little similar in size, and I think just like Rachaad White, I think has the ability to run over somebody. Chip Trayanum, you watch his touchdown runs against USC. He's got breakaway speed. He's got the ability to make guys miss. There's a little thunder and lightning in both of these guys. You
Yeah,
know,
but
just that Rashad, you know, he's the home run. He's showed himself to be the more home run threat. But as these guys get more reps, I mean, ASU played them on the field. Zach Hill played them on the field at the same time a
right.
few times.
Well,
They'll continue to get. I think they'll continue to get reps together as they're now a threat.
I just think that it's going to be a really tough tandem to scheme around next year for people, and I'm sure there's some teams that consider themselves lucky for not having to face them.
But I mean, it's never been the great teams. They never just had one running back. I mean, you look
that's correct.
at the Auburn teams from the mid 2000s who had
US
Brown and Cadillac Williams,
right?
Or those Miami teams that had Willis McGahee and Frank Gore and all these guys. You know, it's never just one guy.
Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson. I mean,
there you go. And the Raiders, yeah. So you know, a lot of great teams. They have multiple running backs because they're able to keep the other guy fresh. And if Daniel Nagata continues to progress the way I think he's capable, you know, this could be a great backfield to watch going forward.
So, looking ahead, you know. We know we've got some guys
this is our Running with the Devils way too early to 2021 preview. So
yeah, and we're not even putting recruits in here yet. Folks.
Oh no. We have a whole nother show for that coming up.
This is because recruiting really is being done in thirds. You saw what we did on signing day. There's another 1/3 of the guys that are kind of committed. There's some surprises.
There'll be another signing day. There'll be another signing day in what, February?
Yes.
Yeah, something like that. And
first week of February.
Before spring ball starts, the ASU will add some grad transfers.
Absolutely.
And a lot of this is it's gonna vary depending. It's gonna be based on who stays, who goes. You know, this is kind of a free year for players. That, you know, this is not going to count against their eligibility. You know, seniors don't necessarily have to leave; they can come back for another year because they, you know, the NCAA is not counting this against their eligibility. So you can have a senior come back for another year. You can have a grad transfer come back for another year if they want. Yeah, but. You know, I mean, let's talk about the guys who are already gone. We talked about Jack Jones, Ashari Crosswell, Frank Darby. They've already declared for the draft and opted out. Players likely to leave.
And this was the kind of the sum of what we both thought here in terms of we don't know, but this is likely to, and we, you know, this represents Ryan and my collective thought here. Obviously, Chase is in his 5th year. Chase was Chase graded out number 1 by a rating service at his position this year, folks. He really did the most
as far as Pac-12 corners go.
That's correct. Yeah, he was absolutely rock solid. And I think he's probably going to get a pretty good grade for leaving. And I know, Chase, I love you, but this is. I'm going to wish you lots of luck going forward if you choose to go out. Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, and again, none of this is official. This is just our own opinion, our own assessment based on what we saw,
speculation,
what we know about these players.
Yeah, and Tyler, you know, we have a defense finally that's beautifully suited to him, and while he very short sample size, we saw what he could do. Now, Tyler, if you're listening, I want you to improve your grip strength. You had your hands on that quarterback a lot, and a stronger, just working out to get your grip better. You probably would have had 4 more sacks. All right, you would have brought that guy to the ground. Let me know if you want some help on that. I think I know what we improved my nephew Kyle's grip strength his senior year. Shannon Foreman, you know, I know he's one of your favorites. But
I liked him coming out of Louisiana. I mean, they moved him around a little bit. You know, D tackle. He was DN this year. He didn't get even though he was considered a starter on the depth chart, not a ton of reps. They've kind of mixed some guys in, so it wasn't like he was, you know, overpowering. But I mean, he's been here for a while now, and I don't know. He's another guy that I was high on, but hasn't really lived up to the bar. I think that was set for him, considering that he played at a great program in Louisiana that's produced a lot of great players. I guess I just expected more from him.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a bad year by any stretch. He was very solid. Making the switch from tackle to end this year, but I could see him leaving this year. So
and Kellen,
Kellen Deach, the offensive tackle, we talked about him. He got himself an honorable mention this year, a grad transfer. I mean, he's eligible to come back this year, but I think he had himself a strong enough year, especially playing next to Donovan West. Got some good stuff on film. He was, I think a stalwart, you could say, left tackle. And I think he's done enough to get himself onto an NFL roster.
Yeah, he was ranked again by there's these services who break down film. He was ranked second in this for the season amongst all Pac-12 tackles. So that ought to get him some nice combine invitations or some free agent offers if he doesn't get drafted.
Yeah, and then of course Michael Turk, he would have left last year if not for COVID. He probably would be on an NFL roster right now if he was able to work out for some of these teams. And I'm hopeful that by the time the draft rolls around, he'll be able to work out for them again, and he should definitely be on an NFL roster. He's got a pro leg. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So fully expect him to be gone. And then Curtis Hodges.
He's a little injury prone in his
switch from wide receiver to tight end.
Right.
Great combination of size and speed. The guy's 6'8". I mean, and he runs like a deer. And he put up some nice plays this year, which was really great to see. Good for him.
Yep.
Not the best attitude. I think that's kind of always held him back. But I still think that he still wants to make a living, and he's got. I like his physical skills. So I think somebody will definitely give him a long look, and he'll fit in. I think he fits well into somebody's system.
Yeah, I mean, and Curtis made arguably one of the biggest changes in his body from freshman to senior year to make himself into a legitimate pro-looking type body at that position. Because when he came in here, boy, he was really skinny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have the old stalwart Kate Cote, who's just
the sixth-year senior. He was granted a sixth year of eligibility this year. He was the starting center. Not the most consistent player this year. Got called for a few too many penalties, in my opinion. But I think I don't know if he could want to come back. He was not one of this coaching staff's recruits. So I think they may want a different face at the center spot.
Well, and we have recruited a very good 4-star center who's going to be signing here at the second signing day.
We're planning on having him sign. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We won't talk about it just yet. But I think they are looking to get a new face at the position.
Yeah, there's
somebody who's just a little more physically gifted and
Cade was not a big center in high school. He was not a center in high school. He was always a tackle, and we made him at this level he was not a match. He wasn't a packed tackle. He was forced to go inside and play guard, and it was up at Camp T where we just couldn't find a center who could keep the ball, get long snap the ball with a hoot in the shotgun. Finally, we just decided one day to give Cade a shot, and he was really the third string guy, and it kind of caught on. But yeah, he's done everything we've asked him to do, and I love the kid. I just hope he has if he does move on, he has, and if he wants to play pro, that he gets his chance with somebody.
And then nothing but the best for him. And then kind of players who are on the fence, maybe 50-50, they stay or go. And that I think it starts with Merlin Robertson. Now, didn't have the most, didn't really flash a lot of times this year. Certainly, his first as a freshman, looked like he was going to be one of the all-time greats on defense here, and just wasn't, just wasn't always the most consistent player. Dealt with some off the field issues, of course. He's a guy who's got a family as a young man.
His father passed away,
Yeah,
and
that's true as well. But he's a guy, I think, that he wants to be able to provide for his family, and now that he's eligible to do so, I think it's a possibility that he could choose to take that route. So
yeah, I think his freshman year, really the defense was designed for him to make a lot of plays, and that's what he got, and he was very hungry, and this year he trimmed way down, and he's running a lot better, but his productivity was down, so he may want to come back just to improve his grade, if he can hang in there a little bit longer.
yeah. And then, another grad transfer offensive lineman who slotted in at right guard this year, Henry Hattis. You never know with some of these grad transfers. Some of them, they just have their heart set on playing 1 year in order to improve their draft stock somewhere, and then they're mentally prepared to leave after that 1 year. So you never know. I mean, he wasn't the most overpowering player. Didn't have a great year. They kind of rotated him in with Ladarius Henderson at times, kind of depending on what the offense was doing. But still a player who had a decent year. But I still think he could improve himself a little bit. Even as a grad transfer, I think he could still come back and help himself for next year.
Yeah, his game sort of reminded me of the guy who transferred in here from USC a few years ago, who was, we at times we had him start, at times we had him rotating in, and he was, what was his name? Big guy from SC.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. His name escapes me at the moment. But I mean, that's kind of how memorable he was, because we can't remember his name. But it's kind of like that. I mean, he didn't really, offensive line is kind of a weird position, because you don't really get noticed unless you're giving up big plays or you're getting called for penalties. Henry Hattis just didn't. I don't know. He didn't really flash on tape. Didn't really overpower anybody with pancake blocks, and wasn't really a lead blocker on a ton of plays. Didn't pull him a lot. He was just kind of there, and that was it. I mean, he was kind of unremarkable.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that there's more that he could have done to help himself, and that's why I think he could come back next year. Another player that we really like. We talking about him on the show. It seems like every week. Evan Fields, the safety. A lot to like about his game. I think he's got a pro body. He's really grown up a lot in his 4 years here. But I think he thrived even more in this offense in this defense. And another year, he could play himself into the top 3 rounds. I really think he's capable of doing that. If he had a full season with his coaching staff and with his defense, I think he could definitely improve his draft stock a lot.
Oh yeah. I've always felt, for instance, his freshman year, the way he moved out there, that he had that all pack kind of capability. And I think
he was an honorable mention this year. No reason he can't help himself next year.
And I'm thinking, if he plays a full year at the level he played the last 2 games, he'll be first team all pack.
Yeah, definitely. Another kid that came in a little bit, was another transfer, a couple of years ago. It's kind of buried on the depth chart, but I think once Jack Jones went out, really flashed, had a couple nice, very, very nice games. As Tamarcus Davis, the corner, he's a terrific special teams player, and he got his opportunities here, and with all the players leaving in the secondary, Chase Lucas, Ashard Crosswell, Jack Jones. Tamarcus could be, the number 1 corner next year. I think he certainly got that. I think he showed enough. He's grown up enough. There were times when he was getting picked on. He was, Not always the most consistent player at times, but I think he's turned himself into a really great corner. And he's redshirt junior, so I mean he does still have some eligibility left. I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't want to come back and maybe be the guy in that secondary next year.
I think a lot of these guys we talk about on the fence, and it's some of it's going to come down to realizing that if this team really hangs together and with the offensive firepower and number of playmakers we have, we could we've got to be one of the favorite to win the South next year, and some of these players really want to win something big. I sense, and that Rose Bowl is
they're not just out for themselves. They want to go out and
right.
They transferred here because they want to win games. They want to play in big bowl games.
Well, even the defensive players said, "I came here because of that quarterback you guys have." You know what I mean? And because of the NFL nature of the coaching to get me ready for the next level.
Totally.
And I'm sure our NFL caliber coaches we've had will tell these guys exactly how it is. Yeah. But none of them want to stop them from pursuing their dreams. But I think they'll give them the tough love they need.
Yeah, they want to help. They want to help them. I mean, they want to. Right. I mean, helping them helps the coaches. So
that's right.
If you put guys in the NFL, the next crop of recruits is going to want to come play for you. So
right.
That's the case. But I still think Tamarcus Davis has some had some growth. He's certainly someone that I think could improve himself. And and that secondary is going to be wide open next year. So he's got if he comes back, he's automatically penciled in as one of those starting corners.
It's his job to lose. Yeah.
So and then sticking with the defense, DJ Davidson, just a guy who goes out there every day, nose to the grindstone, blue collar. One of the adults, I think,
yes.
out there on that team. He's married already. He's shown himself to be very, very responsible and one of the leaders on the defense at the nose tackle spot.
Clearly.
And I love his game. I mean, he always seems to come up with plays, game in and game out. At least one big play a game. It comes from DJ Davidson, and he's another redshirt junior, a guy who. Certainly eligible to go to the NFL, but a guy that at the same time, though, I think could benefit from coming back for another year and improving his stock, especially on a team that can go out and win more games.
See, under this 4-3 now, the three, the nose, the guys who are playing tackle and nose folks don't have this dual gap responsibility that they used to have.
No, it's just a single gap.
It's a single gap management system. And I think he played better under that. So he's one of those guys.
He's so versatile. I mean, the guy just goes out there and thrives no matter what what defense you put him in, what position you put him in. He's got a great motor, great hands, great movement.
Look at him,
great discipline. Just a lot to like about DJ Davidson. I don't think necessarily the love that he deserves.
Yeah. I mean, last year he would drop.
I really hope he comes back because I think he could be just a tremendous player on this defense.
I think he's one of those character guys you look forward to in the locker room that are going to help you win something.
He's the glue. He's the glue. Helps keep it all together.
Correct.
Yeah. So and then finally, our last guy on the fence, one of our favorite players. I mean, just a guy who flashes game in and game out. Just a tremendous athlete, guy who does so much. That's Jermaine Lole, and. He's another guy who went out there this year, made the position change with the change in scheme and didn't seem to miss a beat. He went out there and just balled out and just made plays game in and game out, was creating fumbles, recovering fumbles, knocking down passes, getting to the quarterback, just doing everything that was asked of him and then some. I mean, you saw him, in 2018, he can get out and cover. If you need him to. He can drop back into coverage just as well. The guy can cover running backs. I mean, he can get out in the open and run, this kid. And, I would not blame him for going to the NFL now because I think he could have a great NFL career. But I think, on a team that goes out there and wins, double-digit games, and he's one of the guys who's going to get noticed if on a team that goes out and does that.
Yeah. Well, for all these guys, it's all going to be about fit. But I think Lowley has the most types of
but his athletic skills for his
fit
size,
opportunities. Exactly.
Somebody will find a place for him on their team.
That's what I'm saying. I think he has more fit opportunities than most.
Yeah. Definitely a guy that I'm really hoping comes back, because I love watching him play. I love his game. But certainly a guy I would not be surprised if he goes pro after this year. So, and that leads us into players to watch for next season. And this was kind of a tough list, because you never quite know. It's a long time between now and next fall. You never quite know what some of these guys are thinking, where their heads are at. What they're going to do in the off season, especially with COVID still hanging around out there in a big way. But these are guys I thought we flashed at points during this season. Guys who got some reps this season, even though they were behind on the depth chart a little bit. And with some of the players leaving, could come out and make an impact next season. And that's starts with LV Bunkley Shelton, the wide receiver. He's a guy who started from the beginning of the season. I think had a good rapport with Jaden Daniels. Certainly improved that. Had that fumble against USC, but was still I think a go-to guy and somebody who can is a comment. He's got great hands. He's great speed. I love his route running ability, especially for such a young player. And he's somebody that I think could be a great go-to target in this in this offense, especially on third downs.
No, you can't teach speed, folks, and he's got it in abundance, and he seems to have a really nice football IQ in terms of what to do. What to do once the ball's in his hands, and get how he finishes great yards after catch. But yeah, he's going to be he's going to be one of those guys who can run all those intermediate routes and always get open, and maybe even be the I kind of see him like the next Ayuk. I mean, I'm not comparing him to Ayuk. I think Ayuk has.
He could be a go-to receiver, but at the same time, I kind of see him also as a safety blanket. Somebody that really gets on the rapport with Jaden. It continues to grow, and then just somebody that he looks for. In certain situations, maybe the blitz is coming coming up on him real quick. He needs to get rid of the ball. And Bunkley Shelton's there underneath, and he can make plays after the catch. So
yeah, I got to tell you too,
that's a guy who's going to get a lot of touches going forward.
Because practice, I couldn't go to practice. We couldn't go to practice this year and really see with our own eyeballs who had that breakaway speed. It was so apparent to me, in the last when Ayuk hit the field that was the guy, and he was going to be, he was going to be our breakaway guy. I really haven't been able to tell. I mean, I know Bunkley's fast, and I have a very small sample size in the season, but you just don't know yet. I mean, I haven't seen him in practice enough to tell you if he's going to be that guy.
I think we'll know pretty quick here in the spring. But I definitely like what I saw on film in the games from him.
Well, I think they're going to scheme.
So
I think they have enough film and know what they have to start scheming around with him, quite frankly.
And then just sticking with the offense here, two guys who, on the offensive line, you don't really know who's going to leave just yet, but you can kind of gauge based on what's been going on. And one guy who started early, and another guy who's been in the program for a little while, who's kind of been biding his time. First one obviously Ben Scott. Started this year at right tackle. I thought did a very good job. He's going to continue to be the guy, be one of those tackles there on the outside. He could move to left tackle if Kellen Deach ends up leaving for the NFL. Could stay at right tackle and just continue to get better. And then there's Spencer Lavelle, a bigger guy who's been a backup for most of his time here.
Redshirt sophomore.
Certainly, I think the door is wide open for him to take one of those tackle spots next year.
Yeah. He passes the eye test, and I think it's just a matter of consistency. And he'll have a new coach next year. We'll be talking about the coaching situation in a little bit.
Yeah, but and
sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes that's all it takes, Ryan. Is just new coach, new position, new time, and maybe his time to shine. It's just one of those guys I'm high on.
Yeah, and I think that offensive line is going to continue to be a big part of what this team wants to do.
Mhm.
Obviously, especially in the running game. But I think that they're set up pretty well with some of the players that they're bringing in to continue to play at a high level and be that explosive offense that they were this year
Sure.
times. Now switching over to the defense, again we don't know who of these players are leaving necessarily, but still players that I think are warranted, worth watching, and that starts with Caleb McCullough. He's a guy, true freshman this year, came in with some hype, very highly recruited. A lot to like about his game. Great athlete at the linebacker position. Last 2 games, he made some nice plays filling in, for Darian Butler when it was mop-up time, and then when Butler was out with the contact tracing against Oregon State. Certainly a guy who flashed on film, and certainly somebody that I could absolutely see as a starter as soon as next season even.
It's going to be tough. Our line, if everybody comes back, well, the big one obviously is if Merlin comes back, he's gonna be,
I think Darian comes back. I honestly do. I think that he's kind of proven that he's a focal point in this defense, and he's captain. Yeah. And I could absolutely see him coming back. But yeah, Merlin's kind of the one I'm not so sure about. But I could certainly see Caleb sliding into Merlin's spot next year.
Well, if all 3 of the guys, if Merlin, Soley, and Butler come back, that's going to be the heart and soul of the team right there.
Yeah, definitely. But I can still see Caleb McCullough finding reps.
Oh,
even if it's 2 years down the road, when there's some of those linebacker spots free up, I can absolutely see him, making an impact.
Well,
and then sticking with the linebackers, another guy that, you really like, Connor Soley, is another guy who just is an athletic freak.
Well, he has the heart of 10 men. I'm telling you, having watched him for 4 years at Saguaro, he's fearless, but he's also fast, and he's got such great hands. He's got his hands all around the ball. He's always doing something with his hands. It's just I was really happy that they found a place for him, not only just on special teams, but worked him into the defense, and he didn't disappoint. I think
I mean, when he got his chances, he certainly went out there and made some plays. Had that nice forced fumble against Oregon State.
Mm-hmm.
Just guy, a lot to like about his game, and certainly a guy I think who will find ways to get on the field going forward. Mm-hmm. And then I talked about Tamarcus Davis coming back and being one of the guys in the secondary.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, there's going to be a lot of open spots. I mean, really the only one, if he leaves, and then if Evan Fields leaves, you got really the only guy, for sure you have penciled in is DeAndre Pierce at the other safety spot. He's already said that he wants to come back next year, even though he's a grad transfer. But Ed Woods is a guy that I thought, he found his way onto the field this year as a true freshman. He was Chase Lucas's backup at the other corner spot.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that I like a lot. Even though it was such a small sample size for him this year, the fact that he was able to get on the field for some big reps in like nickel and dime situations, I think he's a guy that is definitely worth watching going into next season.
And Cam Phillips was a junior, correct, this year?
Yeah.
Okay, so he really owes it to himself. He needs to stick around. I think he had a disappointing campaign this year.
Well, it's tough for them to get him on the field. He was kind of the odd man out when they switched from 5 DBs to 4.
Yeah.
And if Evan leaves, I think you could certainly see Cam slide into that other safety spot. The Markham twins are certainly ones to watch in that secondary as well. They went out and made recruiting the secondary a point last year.
Yeah,
and I think they continue to do that this year. So there's definitely going to be some guys out there who are going to be fighting for jobs if they open up in 2021.
Yeah, it's a matter of how much dog they got in them,
Very true. But hey, the great thing about this coaching staff is they've shown how willing they are to play young players. They're not afraid to throw a freshman into the fire and let him find his way. So
it's not just letting them play. It's developing them too. I mean, I look at what we do with our players in 4 years relative from when they start to when they finish, not just looking at their bodies. I'm talking about their skill set, how they play their position. We do a much better job, folks, than USC does. USC gets these 4 and 5 star kids, and they don't leave with any more skill than when they came in to my eye, quite frankly. And I think that's one of the major criticisms.
Not a ton. I think not as much as they maybe could have been had they, getting a little more.
I think that's one of the major criticisms of that program is that they just have not developed players. And it's not just me saying it. Reggie Bush has said it, and other people have said it. They just don't develop players like we do.
So we covered the players for 2021. Now we got to talk about the coaches. And, coaching staff changes are a constant in college football from season to season, and we got a little bit of a scare this week, but it looks like that one has kind of passed in the form of the U of A job. And of course, Antonio Pierce is a U of A alum. We try not to hold that against him too much, but he was, he had a conversation with the administration at the rival school in Tucson about possibly taking over as their head coach. Now, none of us really thought that was legitimate because, he's had his misgivings with that school, especially with the way they treated Dick Tomey. We all thought it was kind of a smokescreen for him to get a new contract, as leverage. And that turns out to be the case with them hiring Jed Fish earlier today. But there's still some guys who could be on the move. And one of them is the co-defensive coordinator, Marvin Lewis.
Right.
Like he will interview for the Houston Texans head coaching job. And there are other NFL head coaching jobs that are going to free up. He's a guy who's, still a big name in the coaching circles, and certainly someone that I think is a coveted candidate for the right kind of job.
I think if he leaves, we're in great shape. I think it's a win-win.
Oh yeah.
Because if he leaves, then you truly have the headroom for Rodriguez and AP to really assert themselves in terms of the style of defense, the scheme, and calling the plays.
Yeah.
If he stays, then they keep benefiting from all that knowledge, that 40 years of knowledge.
Yeah.
But I'm not worried about Marvin leaving, quite frankly, and I don't know that unless he's I don't know if he's fits the Texans scheme, but he's a great coach. He deserves an opportunity to go interview, and if he wants to do it, God bless him, let him go do it.
Yeah.
But and the fact that
he's paid his dues, he's had as much success as he's had in the coaching ranks. He's earned that opportunity if he wants.
Well, and I want to see I want to see Chris Hawkins grow into his role. I want to see Robert Rodriguez grow into his role. I think these are all important guys, and they were brought in here for a reason.
Well, they're great recruiters for one thing. I think they've certainly proven that. But as coaches, I think that's absolutely true. I think that they, it'd be great to see them continue to grow. But the Boise State job is another one that just came on the market with Brian Harsin taking the job at Auburn. And, Zach Hill just came over from Boise State a year ago. He's kind of said that it looks like he is going to stay. They're not really looking at him right at the moment. So, there have been some rumblings that maybe he might go back there, but it looks like he is going to stay put in Tempe.
He seems very happy here, and I think Herm has done, he brought him in there for a specific reason, and I think, he got that job done. Herm said, I wanted to score 40 points a game, and we hit 40 points a game. Now, we had the number one offense. We had the, number one play for, as far as efficiency. We were number one in a lot of categories in offense. You can't, but there's still a lot of room for improvement, folks.
So, I think we all saw that. I think there was still some points left on the board that they could have had from this team. But so there's, I think that there's that unfinished business mentality that's going to make a lot of players want to come back. I think that's also true for the coaches. I think that they have especially Zach Hill, with as successful as the offense was, he's another guy who's I think has that mentality. Hey, I got my guys in place. We're looking really good there towards the end. What can I do? What can we do to keep that rolling in the next year? And I think that's kind of his mindset right now.
Yeah, and folks, one of the other big changes that we wanted to talk about tonight was the fact that Dave Christensen's going to retire.
The offensive line coach, yep.
Yeah, and you know, a pro's pro when it comes to somebody at that position. He's just done has a great career, and he chose to go out as a Sun Devil, and I couldn't be happier for him. And
yeah,
he's developed players, he's put players into the pros.
He did a very good job here. There's a lot to like about Dave Christensen's time on this coaching staff.
Yeah.
Definitely a guy who was always very animated, very easy to spot in practice, always getting, trying to get the best out of his guys.
Yeah, but for last year to pick Ladarius Henderson, a 17-year-old kid, and make him into our left tackle, that to me was just like magic. He like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It was just amazing to me how he was able to pull that off. But it showed that we had to get serious about recruiting left tackle. And you'll be happy to know we've got a couple of them coming in this.
Yeah. I think having those grad transfers come in, I think has definitely helped him. So,
but he's being replaced by.
But I think that it's set up for Kevin Mawai to kind of transition into the offensive line coach. Of course, right now he's kind of the tight ends coach, but I think he could certainly make himself into the O-line coach next year.
I think they're counting on it, and I think he's very impressive in the living room, and I think he's going to be one of those guys who.
Gold jacket definitely helps.
Yeah, gold jackets help, but I think he's also one of those guys who is going to push everybody else in the recruiting room to go out and get the numbers. And he's really he can assess talent.
Yeah.
I have no doubt about it.
Some guys, especially former pros, they're not always the best at recruiting. When they make the transition to coaching, they're not always the best at recruiting. You never really know how some of those guys are gonna do in the living room. And I think he's done a great job transitioning into that role. He doesn't really see it as too big for him, or doesn't see himself as being above it. He's just, I think he's really fit into this role very, very well. And, I don't think he could have asked for a better situation working with his former coach in Herm Edwards.
No, it's, I think this is a real step in the right direction for us in terms of that pro model. Christensen had a long college career, and he did coach in the pros as well, I believe.
Yeah.
But Maui's, he's Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Exactly. And, we'll certainly keep an eye on this as it goes along. This is something we'll talk about in the spring, obviously with the same time as recruiting. We'll talk about some of the coaching changes and what it means for the team. So that'll do it on this edition, the final edition of 2020 of Running with the Devils. I want to thank you all for joining us. We love putting this show together, and we love hearing from you in the comments section. Look forward to seeing what you have to say about this team as we head into the new year. So for Big John Caldwell, I'm the Rhino, Ryan Knowles. We say good night, happy holidays, and forks up. Go Devils. We'll see you in 2021.